Welcome to another episode of What Does the Law Say? Before we move on, please like, share, subscribe, and drop your comments in the comment section. Thank you. All right, so Mr. Akiode, I would also like to ask as regards, we know pregnant women work tirelessly. They were working even before they got pregnant, and then they get pregnant along the line. And some of them don't take their maternity leave until when it's one day to pop. And you wonder that whose hands is this pregnant woman in? Is she safe in this environment? Is this best for her to do? Or and even when she goes on that maternity leave, is she supported in any way by her employer or by her organization in any way?
Okay, so on the issue of maternity leave,
yes.
So if I pick the minimum standard, which is the labor law,
okay,
it recommends 12 weeks.
Yes.
Technically, 6 weeks before EDD.
Yes.
6 weeks after. Most of the time, the employees does not declare their EDD because of witches in Africa and monitoring spirits.
They don't want to monitor them.
So as a result, some of them will prefer to pop in the office and have their 12 weeks than declare that they will go on leave and it will not happen.
Yeah.
Because we've had cases of individuals that had to go for leave before their EDD, and the EDD became late. So imagine if I started 2 weeks to my EDD,
yes,
and I did not give birth. Sorry, the lady didn't give birth until 4 weeks.
Yes.
So I only have how many weeks remaining? 8 weeks.
8 weeks left. No, 6
so
weeks. 2 weeks.
4 out of 12.
Okay, 4 out of 12. Yes.
Yes, that's 8. So what that means is that the employee would prefer to pop in the office. The employee would prefer, I'm strong.
Yes, I can do this.
But it's the responsibility, the duty of care of the employer to ensure that when he notices that there is a risk to the employee, he needs to ask that question. Are you sure you're safe?
Yes.
Rather than ask for, are you sure you're safe? If there's an HMO cover, most often than not, that prenatal would be in that HMO. So they have, as an employer, they can actually demand if the employee is not ready to disclose the medical record.
Yes.
In terms of when.
Yes.
Is this person safe to work? Because most time what the employer would do is to please bring a letter from a medical person to show that you are safe to work to a certain time.
Yes.
So as an employer, what that would help you to cover, if you have that medical report, is that there's a provision that you have a medical report that you are safe to work.
Yes.
So that if anything happens after, the employer is not liable.
Yes.
Because you gave me a medical report to say you're safe to work. But you can also go a step further by trying not to be official in matters like that.
Okay.
So usually, I know it's a sensitive issue trying to know when the EDD is. As the employer, you need to be informal sometimes to know what you need to know.
Yes.
Send somebody that knows that is trusted to that person to advise.
Okay.
Because we've had cases of somebody that was in the office today, and from the office she went to the hospital.
Wow.
And the next day they are saying, Mrs. Datas. I said, sorry, didn't we see her yesterday?
Yesterday, yes.
Because they want the maternity leave to start from the day of the birth.
Yes.
But the law says that it has to be 6 weeks before and 6 weeks after. But because they want to bond with their kids, which is understandable. That's why there are revisions to that 12 weeks now.
Yes.
Recent development is now extending that to 16 weeks.
Okay.
Which some public sector organizations have started. I think Lagos State have started. And some financial institutions have started.
Okay.
I know a couple of weeks back, Access Bank announced that, and more banks are beginning to adopt that. And even private sector organizations are beginning to adopt the 16 weeks.
Yes.
But the aspect where there are differentials is whether they were paying for the entire full or we're not paying for every. So usually it goes back to the employment contract.
Yes.
That part will not be stated because a male contract will be different from a female contract. They're usually template. Yes. But the employee handbook will state it. Yes. That for issues of maternity leave, we have 12 weeks or 16 weeks.
Okay.
Is it going to be paid or not paid? For most organizations that we have worked with, it's usually full payments. But there are some organizations that decide to do half payments, full and half payments, and there are some organizations that do not pay, that they count it as. So it all depends, but it's still the right of the employee to know what my organization practices, and decide whether I can do it or not.
Yes.
But it's a point of clarity that immediately you resume, check the employee handbook. Is it stated? If it's not stated, ask questions from HR.
Yes.
Everything
and don't just assume.
Everything should be transparent. Yes. Such policies are to be open for employees to know. So that I will know from my first week, maybe I should just use my probationary exit and leave before it is time. And if I'm fine, then I'll be able to be. But in other climes of the world, women can actually go 1 year.
Yes.
With their baby.
In other civilized nations,
Yes. I know of a certain person that did that.
Yes.
She did the normal 3 months with pay, did an extra with half pay, and did some other extra without pay.
Wow.
Making 1 full year out of work office. And her work was waiting for her by the time she was done. That's in developed climes anyway. But the other aspect related to it, which I'm sure you would be interested to know, is the maternity part.
The paternity part.
Yes, paternity, sorry. Yes. It is not established.
Yes.
Here no regulation to show how many days. So it is at the discretion of the organization. But practices that we've seen, there was a time they celebrated an organization that was given 2 weeks. And they went into the papers and they were saying about it. But in my research with ILO and countries of the world, I've seen a certain country that gives as high as 16 weeks.
Wow. For a paternity leave?
Interesting days, actually.
Wow.
I think that should be at the upper band of countries that do that. It's like a practice in those countries. As in that upper band, 40 days. Just almost similar to
the maternity
leave.
Yeah, because the fathers also have to support.
Yes.
But here in Nigeria, it's mostly...
So the worst case scenarios we've seen in Nigeria, okay, let me not say the worst case scenario. Let me say the worst case scenario I've been in the situation to be with was, so my wife went into labor in the evening. Okay. So she gave birth overnight.
Yes.
And I could not go to the office that day. So they counted it as casual leave.
Okay.
Then they decided to say I should pick 1 day, either before the naming or after the naming, to come back to the office. So at the end of the day, what happened was that I had to go, I picked the day after, in addition to the day of the naming. At least you can't tell me to come to the office.
Yes.
So I had to.
But technically, you only have 1 day.
The day of the naming. Where do you count that?
That day shouldn't be counted. That was just one of those days. You can't be there. But technically, they're just giving you 1 day, or let's say 2 days.
So that's another one. Then some other considerate organization do 2 days.
Yes.
Or let me say 3 days for paternity leave.
Yes.
1 day before that day, and the 1 day after. And you still a very forward-looking organization that I've seen recently actually has 7 days.
Okay, that's still something.
But they still leave it at your discretion to decide whether you want to take it full 7 or you want to take it later. But
there's definitely no pay for paternity leave. No, like
when you use the word no pay, you are almost assuming that it is unpaid leave. It is actually paid. Okay. So what it means that when you are away, they will not withdraw the daily rate for that day. You will still get your full salary for the month. Okay. But you are not going to have a allowance for it. Okay. It's the same thing for maternity leave. Yes. What usually happens is that they're not giving you maternity leave allowance. Yes. But your salary continues to run for that period. Unlike, or except for annual leave. That the policy, the practice now is that some organization would not pay you something extra. They only pay you for the day's work. While some organizations will pay you a lump sum called leave allowance. So the practice differs. So there is no this is what is right or this is what is wrong. Yes. But it still boils down to, are you fine with it as an employee? Yes. And as the employer, is it fair for you to do that? Yes. Is it fair to do that for your employees.
Yes. I mean, flowing from the whole maternity leave, you discussed about safety, and I would just want us to wrap it up there. Safety for the employer at the workplace. Do employers ensure that, I mean, we can say there's the HMO, there's all that plan for medical checkup and everything, but safety in the workplace itself, is this something that employers take seriously and, make provisions for?
Yes, that would go under employers' liability.
Okay.
So there is the Factory Act, which covers safety of employees within the factory, and by extension, the duty of care of the employer goes to safety.
Okay.
Which means, do you have a first aid box? There are even employers that go as much of signing an agreement with the HMO for emergency ambulance services, so that when there are such matters, they can easily call for such to evacuate the employee out of the premises.
Yes.
Then in terms of the workplace, is it, do you have safety in mind? As simple as the kind of chairs you sit on, because is it ergonometry enough, at least to be sure that I'm not having back aches and is the chairs and the tables at par? What's the lighting in the environment like? If I need to go through stairs, there needs to be clear indications when it comes to HSC to say there's a stairs, there's an elevation. Please, if you are very tall, this is, there are markings and everything. There are HSC requirements that employers must put in place within the organization to be sure that everybody is safe. Now, if that now goes out of place, that there are covers or what we call the group personal accidents. There's an insurance cover that an employer can actually have on behalf of their employees to cover for personal accidents within the group personal accident within the organization. And by virtue of the Pension Act, it gives room for group life insurance for employees. That's in terms of death of the employee, so that their beneficiary has something. There's also the Employer Compensation Act that talks about employers contributing to the NSITF to cover for work-induced injuries. Those are statutory requirements that the law has made for the employer to care for the employees, and those are always there to be sure that the employee is fine while at work. So the only challenge there is being able to differentiate whether they are work-related ailments or their previous ailment. The employment laws make provision for pre-medical tests, which means at the point of employment, we check if you're fit to work. Are there ailments you have that will make you unfit for work? Because that will help you as an employer to protect you ahead of time. Because employment-related ailments would need to be catered for. So take, for example, somebody working in a cement factory. And there is the possibility of having lung-related issues. So if we can tie that to that employment, then NSITF would compensate for such. We call them incapacitation, whether partial or full, all of those are covered. So there are statutory requirements to cater for the employees at work, and there are also personal liability of the employer to be sure that the employees are safe at work.
So it is the responsibility of the employer to ensure safety of the employee at work. Thank you very much, Mr. Akiode, for joining us on today's episode. We are very, very grateful. Thank you very much for watching today's episode. I hope you were able to learn something. Please like, share, subscribe, and also drop your questions in the comment section. If you'd like to follow Mr. Segun Akiode for any other explanations, or you want him to answer any questions, or you also like to learn more about HR and capacity development, you can follow him at Segun Akiode on YouTube. You can also check out in the description for all other links to follow Mr. Segun Akiode. Thank you. See you next week.